The room went dead silent. I was on my knees, tasting copper, with two deputies grinding my shoulders into the cheap linoleum. Standing over me was Sergeant Keller, his service weapon leveled right at my chest. Behind him, the girl I'd tried to protect was sobbing. The councilman wiped blood from his lip where I'd connected, smirking down at me. "Finish him, Sergeant," he spat. "He assaulted an officer. He's trash." Keller's finger tightened on the trigger. I didn't beg. I didn't look away. I just shifted my weight, and the silver chain around my neck slipped out, swinging loose in the fluorescent light. The sergeant's eyes tracked the movement. He saw the metal. He saw the insignia. And for the first time in 20 years, I saw a statue flinch. "Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from? Drop your city and mile marker. We love seeing how far our stories travel." The rain in eastern Pennsylvania hits different than anywhere else in the country. It's cold, it's grey, and it comes down with a relentless, miserable persistence that seeps right into your bones, bypassing the jacket and the skin to settle somewhere deep in the marrow. I'd been hauling a load of steel coils out of Pittsburgh, heading for a drop in Jersey, and my back was screaming at me in a language I was trying my best to ignore. You drive enough miles, you learn to negotiate with your own body. Trade a little stiffness now for a few more miles on the logbook. But tonight, the negotiation had broken down. Every jolt of the cab sent a spike of fire up my spine, and my eyes felt like they were packed with sand. I checked the mirrors, the spray from the 18 wheels fogging up the glass, turning the headlights of the cars behind me into smeared ghosts. I needed a stop. Not a nap, just a reset. A cup of coffee that didn't taste like battery acid, a stretch of the legs, maybe 5 minutes where the world wasn't vibrating at 65 miles per hour. I saw the sign for a little town called Creekside. Just a fuel stop, a diner and a community hall that looked like it had been built before the war and forgotten shortly after. I eased the rig down the off-ramp, feeling the weight of the coils pushing against the momentum. The brakes hissed, a long, weary sigh that matched my own. I parked in the back lot, away from the glare of the floodlights, and killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was sudden and ringing. I sat there for a moment, just listening to the rain hammer on the roof of the cab, staring at the dash. My hands were still vibrating from the wheel. I looked at them, scars on the knuckles, grease under the nails, a tremor that I told myself was just the road. I wasn't looking for trouble. I never am. I just wanted to be invisible for an hour. I grabbed my jacket, the old canvas heavy with grease stains and memories, and stepped out into the deluge. The cold wind slapped me awake, sharp and biting. I locked the cab and headed for the building next to the diner. It looked like the whole town was parked out front. Pickups, beat-up sedans, a sheriff's cruiser parked aggressively on the sidewalk, forcing pedestrians to walk in the mud. I should have known then to turn back. When the law parks like they own the concrete, usually it means they think they own the people standing on it too. I shook the rain off my coat in the entryway and stepped inside. It wasn't a diner, it was the community hall, packed shoulder to shoulder. The air was hot and smelled of damp wool, fried food, and tension. At the front of the room, on a small wooden stage, a woman was standing at a microphone. She couldn't have been more than 25, wearing a blazer that looked a size too big, her hands trembling as she held a stack of papers. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired you get from missing sleep, but the kind you get from fighting a battle you know you're losing. "We just want to know where the funding went," she was saying, her voice thin but steady. "The Veterans Housing Project was supposed to break ground 3 months ago. My father, he died waiting for that ground to break. He froze to death in his car 2 miles from here because this town promised him a bed and gave him excuses." A murmur went through the crowd. Some heads nodded, others looked down at their boots, ashamed. Sitting in the front row, legs crossed, was a man in a tailored suit that cost more than my truck. He had that slicked back hair and the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, predatory and bored. That was Councilman Rourke. I didn't know his name then, but I knew his type. I'd seen 1,000 of him in 1,000 towns. He was flanked by 2 deputies who looked less like peace officers and more like hired muscle, and a third man, huge, neck thick as a tree stump, wearing a shirt that strained against his biceps. Private security, or just a goon on a payroll. "Sarah, honey," Rourke said, not bothering to stand up. He had a microphone of his own, louder, deeper. "We've been over this. Logistics, supply chain issues. You wouldn't understand the complexities of municipal development. Go home, Sarah. You're embarrassing yourself." "I understand theft," she said, her voice gaining a little steel. "I understand that the land was sold to a private developer last week, your brother-in-law's company. I have the deeds right here." She held up the papers. The room gasped. That was the match in the powder keg. Rourke stood up then. He wasn't smiling anymore. "That's enough," he said, his voice hard. "You're disrupting a public meeting. I think it's time you went home." "I have a right to speak," Sarah shouted, gripping the podium. "You have the right to leave," Rourke said. He nodded to the big man. "Escort her out, Biggs. She's trespassing." I stood in the back, watching. I told myself to stay put. Not your town, Jack. Not your fight. I had a schedule to keep. I had a quiet life I was trying to protect. But then I saw Biggs step onto the stage. He didn't just guide her. He grabbed her arm, hard enough to make her wince. She tried to pull away, and he yanked her, spinning her around like a rag doll. "Let go of me," she cried out. "Easy now, sweetheart," Biggs rumbled, putting a hand on her shoulder to shove her toward the stairs. He squeezed. I saw her knees buckle from the pain. That was it. The line. It had been crossed. I didn't run. Running attracts attention. I just started walking. I moved through the crowd like a barge through drift ice. People parted for me, maybe because of my size, maybe because of the look on my face. I didn't say a word. I just kept my eyes on the stage. "Get your hands off her," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the murmuring room like a jake break in a tunnel. Biggs stopped. He looked up, squinting into the dim light of the hall. "Who the hell are you?" "Does it matter?" I asked, stopping at the foot of the stage. "Let the lady go." Rourke laughed. It was a dry, ugly sound. "Another bleeding heart? Or just a transient passing through? Officer, remove this vagrant." One of the deputies stepped forward, hand on his baton. "Sir, turn around and walk away. This is official town business." "Bullying a girl isn't business," I said, my eyes locked on Biggs. He still had his hand on Sarah's arm. Her face was white with fear, but she was looking at me with a desperate kind of hope. That look, it's a heavy thing to carry. It weighs more than the steel on my trailer. "I said walk away, old man," Biggs sneered. He shoved Sarah aside, sending her stumbling into the podium, and stepped to the edge of the stage. He towered over me. He was younger, faster, stronger, but he hadn't walked the miles I had. He hadn't seen the things I'd seen. "Last chance," I said softly. Biggs didn't take it. He jumped down from the stage, leading with a right hook meant to take my head off. It was a sloppy punch, telegraphed from a mile away. He was used to scaring people, not fighting them. I didn't block it. I stepped inside it. I dropped my level, letting his fist sail over my shoulder, and drove my own fist into his solar plexus. It wasn't a movie punch. It was a mechanic's punch, short, torque-heavy, and unforgiving. I felt the air leave him in a wet, desperate wheeze. He doubled over, gasping. I grabbed the back of his neck and guided his face into the edge of the stage. Thud. He went down and stayed down. The room erupted. Rourke was screaming, "Arrest him! Arrest that maniac!" The 2 deputies weren't bored anymore. They pulled their batons, snapping them open with a metallic clack. They rushed me, one from the left, one from the right. "Stay down!" the first one yelled, swinging the baton at my ribs. I took the hit. I had to. I turned my body so the steel rod slammed into the meat of my lat instead of the bone. It hurt. A sharp, blinding flash of pain that whited out my vision for a second, but I used the momentum. I grabbed the baton before he could retract it, twisting it violently against his thumb. He yelped, his grip failing, and I ripped it from his hand. The second deputy tackled me from the side. We went crashing into the front row of chairs, metal legs screeching against the floor. He was heavy, trying to get a chokehold on me. I tucked my chin, protecting my windpipe, and drove an elbow backward. Once, twice. I felt his grip loosen. I scrambled up, breath coming hard. The first deputy was coming at me again, unarmed but furious. I tossed the baton aside. I wasn't going to use a weapon on a cop, even a dirty one, and squared up. He threw a wild haymaker. I caught his wrist, used his momentum to spin him, and shoved him hard into Rourke, who had been shouting orders from safety. They both went down in a tangle of limbs and expensive fabric. For a second I stood there, chest heaving, scanning for the next threat. The crowd was backed up against the walls, eyes wide. Sarah was still on stage, clutching the podium, staring at me. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice gravelly. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I think so. You need to go. They'll kill you." "I'm not leaving you," she said, her voice trembling but fierce. "You don't have a choice." "Back up!" The deputy on the floor was screaming into his radio. "Officer down! We have an active assailant at the town hall. Send everything!" The doors at the back of the hall burst open. The wind and rain howled in, followed by 4 more uniformed officers. But these weren't local deputies. These were state police. Grey uniforms, campaign hats, heavier armour. They moved with a precision the local boys lacked. In the lead was a sergeant, grey crew cut, sharp eyes, shotgun held at the low ready. "Everybody freeze!" he bellowed. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Rourke scrambled to his feet, straightening his suit, pointing a shaking finger at me. "He's crazy! He attacked my staff! He assaulted a police officer! Shoot him!" The sergeant, Sergeant Keller, his name tag read, swept his gaze over the room. He saw Biggs groaning on the floor. He saw the battered deputies. He saw me, standing alone in the wreckage of the chairs, blood dripping from a cut above my eye, fists still clenched. "Drop to your knees!" Keller ordered, swinging the shotgun toward me. "Now!" I looked at him. I could see the discipline in his stance. This wasn't a bully like Biggs. This was a soldier. I knew I couldn't fight him, and I wouldn't. I slowly raised my hands, palms open. "I'm complying," I said calmly. "On your knees, hands behind your head." I lowered myself slowly, my knees cracking on the hard floor. The 2 local deputies I'd fought scrambled up, eager for revenge now that I was at gunpoint. One of them rushed over and kicked me hard in the ribs. I grunted, doubling over, but didn't fight back. "That's enough!" Keller barked at the deputy. "Secure him!" They swarmed me. Hands roughed me up, patting me down, yanking my arms back. I felt the cold bite of steel cuffs on my wrists. They shoved me forward, forcing my face into the floor. The smell of dust and wax was overwhelming. "You're done," Rourke hissed, walking over to stand above me. He looked down, his face twisted in a victorious sneer. "Assaulting an officer? Kidnapping? We'll throw the book at you. You'll die in a cell, trucker." He kicked dirt at my face. I turned my head, spitting out blood. Sarah screamed from the stage. "He didn't do anything. They were hurting me." "Quiet, girl," Rourke snapped. "Unless you want to be in the cell next to him." Sergeant Keller holstered his shotgun and walked over, his boots heavy on the floor. He looked down at me with disgust. To him, I was just a brawler, a drifter who came into a peaceful town and started a riot. He didn't see the context. He just saw the violence. "Get him up," Keller ordered. The deputies hauled me up to my knees. My flannel shirt had been torn open in the scuffle, buttons popped, fabric hanging loose. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my heart rate. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the throbbing ache of bruises and old scars. Keller stepped in close, grabbing my shirt to haul me to my feet. He was angry, controlled, lethal. "You picked the wrong town, pal. I don't tolerate—" He stopped. His hand had brushed against my chest to yank me up. The movement had dislodged the silver chain I always wear, pulling it out from my undershirt. It swung free in the harsh light. Keller froze. His eyes locked onto the metal hanging there. It wasn't a crucifix. It wasn't a wedding ring. It was a set of dog tags, battered and worn smooth by time, and resting against them, glinting with a dull, menacing shine, was a small, star-shaped medal with a blue ribbon, the Silver Star, and behind it a smaller, darker insignia, the trident. Keller's hand was still gripping my collar, but all the strength had gone out of his fingers. He stared at the insignia. Then he looked up at my face. He really looked at me. He saw the scar that ran through my eyebrow. He saw the way I stood, even in cuffs. He saw the eyes. "Sergeant?" Rourke asked, stepping closer. "What are you waiting for? Drag him out." Keller didn't answer. He didn't move. He just stared at me, his mouth opening slightly, his breath catching in his throat. "Sergeant!" Rourke yelled. Keller slowly let go of my shirt. He took a step back. His face had drained of color. "I know you," Keller whispered. The room was silent. I looked him in the eye. "Do you, Sergeant?" I asked softly. Keller looked at the deputies holding my arms. He looked at the gun on his hip. He looked back at the trident. "Oh, my God," he said. "I know you," Keller whispered. The words hung in the air, heavy and absolute, cutting through the ambient hum of the hall's ventilation and the nervous shuffling of the crowd. The room was silent. I looked him in the eye, my face still inches from the linoleum where they'd pressed me. The adrenaline was starting to curdle into that cold, sharp clarity that comes after the fight. I saw the recognition in his eyes, not just of a face, but of a debt. It was the look men get when they see a ghost they owe their life to. "Do you, Sergeant?" I asked softly. Keller looked at the deputies holding my arms. Two local boys, sweating, their aggression fading into confusion as they sensed the shift in the alpha dynamic. He looked at the gun on his hip. He looked back at the trident resting against my chest, the silver dull against the sweat-stained grey of my undershirt. "Oh my God," he said, the breath leaving him in a rush. "Sergeant!" Rourke yelled, his voice cracking. The councilman stepped forward, his expensive shoes crunching on broken glass. "I gave you an order. This man is a violent transient. Get him out of my sight." Keller didn't turn. He didn't even blink. He just reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and placed it on the shoulder of the deputy holding my left arm. "Let him go," Keller said. His voice was low, dangerous. "But sir," the deputy stammered, glancing at Rourke, "he assaulted." "I said let him go," Keller roared. The sound was explosive, a drill instructor's command that bypassed the brain and went straight to the motor functions. The deputies released me as if I'd suddenly turned red hot. I didn't scramble up. I stood slowly, wincing as my ribs protested, rotating my shoulders to work out the kink the handcuffs had started. I brushed the dust off my knees, my face impassive. I tucked the chain back under my shirt, buttoning the flannel with deliberate, steady movements. I didn't look at Rourke. I didn't look at the crowd. I kept my eyes on Keller. "It's been a long time, Miller," I said. Keller, Miller, swallowed hard. He straightened up, his posture shifting from aggressive cop to something more rigid, more deferential. 11 years, Master Chief. Kandahar, the convoy ambush." "I remember," I said. "You were the kid who couldn't keep his head down. And you were the one who dragged me out of the kill zone when the lead truck got hit," he said, his voice thick. He looked at the local deputies, his eyes hardening into flint. "You idiots have no idea what you just did." What we did?" Rourke sputtered, his face turning a blotchy, furious red. "We defended this town. That man is a criminal. I want his arrest processed immediately. I'll have your badge for this, Sergeant. I know the governor." Miller turned slowly. The movement was predatory. He walked toward Rourke, invading the politician's personal space until he was towering over him. Rourke shrank back, hitting the edge of the stage. "You want to arrest him?" Miller asked, his voice deceptively calm. "For what? Stopping your hired thug from assaulting a woman?" "He attacked my security detail!" Rourke pointed at Biggs, who was groaning on the floor, trying to push himself up. "He's a menace!" "He's a decorated Navy SEAL," Miller said, the words landing like hammer blows. Silver Star, Navy Cross, and if he put your man on the floor, it's because your man deserved to be there. The room gasped. I hated it. I hated the labels. I hated the way the air in the room changed, the way the fear in the crowd's eyes turned to awe. I didn't do it for the medals. I did it because the girl was crying. I kept my face stone, staring at a spot on the back wall. I don't care if he's Captain America, Rourke hissed, though his voice was shaking now. He has no authority here. This is my town meeting, my rules. Not anymore, I said. I stepped forward. The crowd parted for me, giving me a wide berth. I walked up to Rourke. The smell of his cologne was cloying, masking the scent of fear, sweat. The lady was speaking, I said, about the land, about the veterans. That's confidential municipal business, Rourke sneered, trying to regain his composure. You have no proof of anything. Actually, a voice said from the door. We all turned. A young trooper, one of Miller's men, was standing there holding a tablet. Sergeant, we pulled the security footage from the hall and the dashcam from the cruiser out front. Miller held out his hand. Show me. The trooper walked over and handed the tablet to Miller. I watched Miller's face as he watched the screen. His jaw tightened. The veins in his neck stood out. He watched it once, then looked at Rourke with pure disgust. You want to see this, Councilman? Miller asked, turning the screen around. On the grainy video, clear as day, was Rourke grabbing Sarah's arm 5 minutes before the meeting started, shoving her against the wall. You could see his mouth moving, his finger jabbing in her face. Then, the footage from inside, Biggs manhandling her, the escalation, the clear, undeniable aggression before I ever stepped in. That's out of context, Rourke whispered. And then there's this, the trooper added. We ran the plates on the private security SUV out back. Reported stolen out of Philly 2 weeks ago. And inside, we found a weapon with the serial number filed off. Rourke's face went white. He looked at Biggs, who had managed to stand up, swaying. Biggs looked at Rourke, then at the exit. Don't even think about it, I said to Biggs. Biggs froze. He looked at me, remembering the feel of the floor, and decided he'd rather take his chances with the cuffs. He slumped against the wall. Miller handed the tablet back to the trooper. He unhooked the handcuffs from his belt, the same ones he'd been about to put on me. He walked over to Rourke. Councilman Rourke, Miller said, his voice ringing with satisfaction, you have the right to remain silent. You can't do this, Rourke shrieked as Miller spun him around. I am the council. I own this town. Not tonight, Miller said, ratcheting the cuffs tight. Tonight the law owns it. As they led Rourke away, passing me, he glared. You're nothing, he spat, just a dirty trucker. I didn't blink. I'm the guy who stopped you. The deputies, the local ones who had tackled me, were standing awkwardly by the wall. They looked terrified. I walked over to them. They flinched. You got a choice, I said quietly. You can be his dogs. I nodded toward the door where Rourke was being dragged out. Or you can be peace officers. Decide which one you are before you put that badge on tomorrow. One of them looked down, unable to meet my gaze. The other nodded, just once, a jerky, ashamed movement. I turned to Sarah. She was still standing near the podium, looking overwhelmed. The adrenaline dump had hit her. She was shaking. I walked over and picked up her stack of papers from the floor, tapping them straight on the wood. Here, I said, handing them to her. She took them, her fingers brushing my calloused hand. You didn't have to do that. You could have been killed. He wasn't going to shoot, I said. Bullies like that, they want you to be afraid. Once you're not afraid, they don't know what to do. Thank you, she whispered, for stopping him, for everything. You did the hard part, I told her. Standing up to speak, that takes more guts than throwing a punch. Miller walked back in, brushing his hands off as if he'd just taken out the trash. He walked up to us, looking at me with that same mixture of respect and disbelief. We got him, Miller said, and we got the developer on the phone. Seems like once they heard the state police were involved, that land deal suddenly got cancelled due to clerical errors. The veteran housing project is back on the table. Sarah let out a sob, covering her mouth. Really? Really? Miller smiled gently. Then he turned to me. Jack, I can't let you just walk out of here. My boys, they need to know who they just saw in action. Let me buy you that steak, please. I looked at the door. The rain had stopped. The road was waiting. The schedule was shot. The logbook was going to be a mess, and my ribs were going to ache for a week. But looking at Miller, the kid I'd pulled out of the fire, now a man keeping the fire away from others, I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the heater. Coffee, I said, black and maybe some pie. Miller grinned. Done. We walked out of the hall together, Sarah flanked by the troopers who were now treating her like royalty. The crowd outside had gathered, watching the councilman get stuffed into the back of a cruiser. When they saw us, a silence fell. Then someone started clapping. Just one person at first, then another. Then the whole wet, cold parking lot was applauding. I pulled my collar up, ducking my head. I hate that sound. Wave, Jack, Miller murmured. Let them see you. I'm just a driver, I grunted. You're never just a driver, Miller said. We sat in the diner next door for an hour. The coffee was terrible, burnt and weak at the same time, but it tasted like victory. Miller and I didn't talk much about the war. We talked about the road, about his kids, about the silence of the night shift. He asked me why I left the teams, why I chose the cab over the command. The truck doesn't lie to you, I told him, tracing the rim of the mug. The engine runs or it doesn't. The load is heavy or it's light. The road is straight or it curves. It's simple. The world is complicated. Miller nodded. I get it, but tonight you made it simple again. Good guys, bad guys. There are no good guys, Miller, I said, standing up and dropping a $10 bill on the table. Just guys who try. You're a good man, Jack, he said, standing with me. I'm a tired man, I corrected. We walked out to the truck. The lot was empty now, save for the police cruisers and my rig. The air was crisp, the storm having washed the humidity away. I did a walk around, checking the tires, thumping the rubber with my iron. Habit. Miller stood by the driver's door while I climbed up. If you ever come through here again, Miller said, you don't pay for a meal. You hear me? The town owes you. Town doesn't owe me a thing, I said, settling into the seat. Just tell Sarah to build those houses good, make 'em warm. I will. I fired up the engine. The diesel rumble shook the cab, a vibration that felt like a heartbeat. I released the parking brake, the hiss signaling it was time to move. Stay safe, Red Line, Miller called out, saluting one last time. I didn't salute back. I just gave him a two-finger wave from the steering wheel. I pulled the rig back onto the interstate, the lights of Creekside fading in the mirrors until they were just a soft orange glow against the low clouds. The highway stretched out ahead, a ribbon of black cutting through the dark woods. My ribs throbbed in time with the expansion joints of the bridge, a dull reminder that I wasn't 20 anymore. I reached up and touched the chain through my shirt. For a long time, I'd worn it like a penance, a weight I had to carry for the ones who didn't come back. But tonight, for the first time in years, it felt a little lighter. I thought about Sarah, about the way she stood tall, even when she was terrified. I thought about Miller, standing between the law and the right thing, and choosing the right thing. The dash lights glowed soft green, illuminating the empty cab. I was alone again. Just me. The hum of the tires, and the white lines ticking by. I wasn't a hero. Heroes are the ones who stay and build. I was just the guy who cleared the road so they could work, and that was enough. I shifted into high gear, the engine settling into a steady rhythm, and drove on into the quiet dark. Thank you for watching. And if stories like this one about courage, sacrifice, and second chances speak to you, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us share more incredible true stories that honor the forgotten heroes among us.